The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Onowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Onowitz, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, 19 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Pastor Scott.
Would everyone stand for prayer? He has shown you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. A passage from the Holy Scripture. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, as we stand here today as a community, we are praying that you would guide our hearts and take us by our hand as those that have the responsibility to administer justice have given their decision. We ask that you unite us and keep us in love as a community. And to your hands we commit ourselves, our community, our family, and our city. Amen.
As a father of four, I am raising two sons in the city of St. Louis. I am gravely disappointed in the decision that was handed down by the judge today. It is a difficult time for us as a city. It's going to make it even more difficult. I worry about their safety and their security, and I want to make sure that if indeed they find themselves in court, they can get a fair shake. Unfortunately, over half our city doesn't feel that is even possible, and they feel even that it's even more difficult after today's decision. So we're going to have some very difficult days ahead, and it's going to be very important for each and every one of you to work vehemently within your communities to bring St. Louis together, to show St. Louis the way so that we can be the force that begins to bring St. Louis and connect St. Louis and show them that there is a better day and a brighter tomorrow ahead. Again, as a father of four and raising two sons, it is not a good time in the city of St. Louis or America. But this is when it's so important for each and every one of you to stand and lead your communities and lead them in a way that's going to bring people together and not divide them more. So with that, I don't know if any other comments, anyone else has anything else to add today. Alderman from 17th Ward.
Mr. President, members of the board, I As a senior member of the board, the president had called me this morning to discuss today's meeting, and I want to commend him for his wisdom. He decided that we should have it today because he thought it might be an opportunity for us to do something symbolically and something to lead by example for those throughout the city who may see us as leaders. And I commend him on that decision. I know he agonized over whether or not we should have the meeting or not. I'm a white guy who's had a pretty charmed life, so I am far from being an appropriate spokesperson for advising constraint or asking for restraint in our dissatisfaction with what the verdict was. I will leave that request for restraint to come from people who are more appropriate to make it. People like the family of the victim who have graciously, generously, and magnanimously done that publicly. Not having experienced that, I'm not the best person to speak on that topic, but there are some things that I do know, and I think we all know. I think it's pretty clear from watching the video and reading the accounts that it was a collection of a shocking breakdown of standard procedures in this particular incident. And it's documented, and it's kind of, at least in my mind, fairly shocking disregard for the established procedures for the police department. The fact that a non-departmental issued gun was in the car and was obvious and noticeable to everyone, and that was going on and was going on unreported. A police chase, the officer who did the shooting was involved in the investigation and actually had access to the crime scene. It seems like there's a wholesale breakdown of procedures. And I think that's something that we all know and is somewhat shocking to all of us that happened. And when you have a breakdown in procedures like that, it just creates a question of the whole process. It creates questions of the system. And when we lose faith in the system, what do we have? We have anarchy. I also know that the vast majority of the police officers out there are really good people. They're on the job for the right reason, and they have an incredibly difficult job. When there's a breakdown in procedures like that, it makes their job that more difficult to do. I know the people on the board of Aldermen down here who are down here for the right reasons, and who represent all parts of the city, who I have respect for, and I've seen them over the years do selfless things, and are down here for all the right reasons. When you think about what you know and you don't know, I think it's important to also think about what we can do and can't do. We as legislators, we can't change the opinion or the mindset of a jury or a judge. But we can go ahead and lead by example, and we can think about policies that can really make a difference. It seems as each one of these incidents develops, the common thread is that someone in their 20s or 30, in their youth are confronted by police, and we have these expectations that the police are going to be able to solve these problems, when many of the problems, they didn't originate when the police confronts this person. They originated years earlier, and the way we address that is through better education and better opportunities, and those are things that all of us on the board down here can agree to that are important for our city, and things that we can work on. And I just wanted to go up and to the extent possible, lend my voices today to all the good things that we can do together and things that we should do together, and recognize that and acknowledge our president and his leadership and wisdom in calling today's session and recognizing this is an opportunity for us that we shouldn't go ahead and do business as usual, but we should go on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
In 1999, I went into the Boxing Hall of Fame, and there's a punch called the telegraph. It's never thrown. You know what the punch is going to, I'm faking you out like I'm going to throw a punch. And this is what's been occurring with this decision all the way through. They've been telegraphing. If they think we are stupid enough to think that all that security, the National Guard and the Highway Patrol that's coming into this town, with all that security, that the verdict was not going to be what it was going to be, is crazy. I could have told you what the verdict was going to be when the shooting happened on that day. It is absolutely unfair. So the punch that they threw today is called a below the belt. It's an unfair punch. And another punch that's going to occur real soon is all those of you that have a moratorium on liquor. If you have a moratorium on liquor in your ward, the judge is going to be taking your moratorium away real soon. So be ready to get punched in the gut again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I've talked with a number of people this morning, and our common conversation was, we all have to be mindful that in situations like this, although voices need to be heard and we need to understand the discerning facts that are there, we also have to remember that those people who are less fortunate than most of us will be the ones who are harmed the most when we take actions like this. They don't have the luxury to go away for 2 or 3 or 4 days to a hotel somewhere. They don't have the luxury of having their food delivered and or go somewhere else and just be comfortable. They can't walk to the grocery store or the pharmacy or those kinds of things. So we have to be mindful of that. We also need to be mindful that we need to continue, as I've said many times, to educate people properly. And I was so impressed by the young people at Vashon High School when we were there the other day, because they were understanding a lot more than I realized they would at such a young age. And what they want to do is express themselves in music and written word, and also prepare themselves on the proper education level to make changes and have the effect to make decisions that will have better outcomes. So I was very impressed with them. And I explained to them, when you charge somebody with first-degree murder, that is very hard to prove, and it must show that someone either woke up that day or previous day, planned out the whole activity, knew who it was that they were going to perpetrate the activity on, seek that person out to do that, and then carry out the action. So unfortunately, we knew what the outcome was going to be, because how do you prove that? Now, had we had a common sense charge like manslaughter or second degree, it would have been very easy for the judge. So we got a lot of unbalanced kinds of things that go on in our society, and we know that, but we are not in a position to change that at this very moment, but we can in the near future, because we have to address how things happen, and we have to be closer to it. We can't leave people on their own to make these decisions anymore. And it's just really unfortunate. But I tell you, I'm worried about the people who are less fortunate in a situation like this. I'm really worried about my senior citizens. And whatever I have to do, if I have to suit up and boot up, whatever they need, I'm going to be there for them.
There you go. Alderman from the 18th.
Mr. President, members of the board, when you are a person with this hue in America, it is difficult to feel optimistic in the face of decisions like we see here today. But you know, history teaches us many things, and sometimes we want to act like that people's behavior should not be reflective of the history and their experiences in a country. People who look like me, most were brought here as a part of chattel slavery. People who look like me in this country were the object of attacks by local police departments whose job during that time period was to capture and to return freed individuals, free black folks, and take them back into slavery. And so then you act like a community who has had that experience is suddenly supposed to trust that institution that in fact was constantly trying to put them back into slavery. Suddenly, all of that history is supposed to be forgotten and everything is supposed to be okay. That's unrealistic. And so when we come to situations like we see here today with this particular case, regardless of the facts, regardless of what actually happened, you are still only compounding this decision on decades and centuries of that experience in history in this country. You cannot take it out of context. To take it out of context then means you would not understand the behaviors of the people when they respond to situations like this today. Suddenly, because they're responding in ways that may not be convenient, something is wrong with them as opposed to the system and the institutions that created that response by oppression, repression, and exploitation, discrimination, and racism. And so then as a body of individuals elected by people in this community, it certainly behooves us, one, to be an example, but two, to have a real dialogue with each other and to engage our communities to discuss this history openly, factually. And at times we'd have to be kindly, but other times we have to put it out here on the table as it was for people to understand and to have sensitivity enough to one another where we can actually begin to make some of the structural changes that are necessary to make this city and this country a better place in which to live. And so when you come from a community and you're people that look like me and you say, we want St. Louis or we want America to be great again, how can you say that in our faces? What was great about it in 1860? What was great about it in 1830? What was great about it in 1918 when we were facing segregation? How is that great? Are you lifting that up as an institution, as something, as the highest level of human development? Surely it is not. There is a vision beyond this in which we can live. There is a vision beyond this in which we can create. And there is a vision beyond this, a more humane vision that we must lay the foundation for today. So regardless of the facts in this, and we believe as a community that there was unfairness in this decision, based upon those years of experience, we believe that there was unfairness. Because it's difficult to walk out of that experience and say that that wasn't real. Let's look at it. It happened right here in the city of St. Louis, the Dred and Harriet Scott case, where the Supreme Court ruled that black people have no rights that white people are bound to respect. What do you say to that? What would be your expectation from a community that has suffered and endured that for generations? And so then this board certainly, in my opinion, has an obligation, and I appreciate the discussion we had with you this morning, not to act like there's business as usual on this Friday, September 15, 2017, but to point out, regardless of what we felt about the decision, but to point out that there is a problem, that there is an underlying issue, that there is an underlying illness that America has yet to solve and to heal, and that we must address it, that this body, as the leadership of this city, must address it in an open and candid way if we're going to heal it, and if we're going to build a better tomorrow, a tomorrow that all St. Louisans can enjoy, and not just the rich, not just the powerful, but all of us. So I stand here as a descendant of a slave, of slaves that were held here in the state of Missouri that were brought by the French. My family has been here since this was a French territory, brought from the city of Santo Domingo in Haiti as part of the first 500 Africans that were brought into Missouri to do coal mining in DeSoto, Missouri. This is what we're facing. These are the people that you look at today. This is the history upon which this city was built upon and upon which this country is enjoying its wealth today. And we must recognize it and have a discussion about it. And so we are not surprised as a community. We are not sideswiped by this decision, but it certainly does not build any confidence in us that we can really find justice in America. It builds no confidence in us whatsoever. And so if we're going to not have a underpinning current of dissatisfaction in this country, then we must begin to have a much greater dialogue than what we are having today. The dialogue just can't be on blighting bills. It just can't be on what the city chose. We have to get up under the issues that causes us to find ourselves in the different corners. And that's racism, discrimination, and issues of exploitation in this country based upon an illness that is yet to be healed. And we need to stop elevating racism to the level of a political position and recognize it as the mental psychosis that it is. They're sick.
Amen.
They need healing.
Amen.
Bring in the psychologists. Bring in the best doctor you can find because something is wrong. And we must stop accepting that as a normal way of human behavior because humans didn't used to be that way. Something happened. And so then, we are not surprised as a community. I am not surprised as an individual. It seemed to us that the evidence was overwhelming in the other direction of the decision, but this is where we are, and this is what we must deal with. And so I think it is appropriate that we do not just do business as usual, that we make this meeting as short as possible, and that we go into other actions. I mean, some of us have talked about going into the rotunda and trying to show levels of unity by doing a prayer of unity for our community, but recognize people are upset and will be upset based upon that history. And that voice needs to be heard and have an opportunity to be aired. And this is what we are facing here today. And so with that, Mr. President, I see that other people are standing. I am, as the floor majority leader, moving towards adjourning the meeting.
Okay. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th that we adjourn the meeting. We're going to adjourn for the purposes of, we got to go to the rotunda?
Yes, Mr. President, but
You want to?
I didn't officially make the
Oh, you didn't want to make a motion? Oh, you
I
said
I
you were
was moving in that
Moving
direction. I guess by using the word moving, you thought it was a motion.
Yeah. Alderman from 22nd. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I stand before you as a black man. I stand before you as a black man that represents one of the most challenging neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. I stand before you as a black man that's concerned when I leave outside the city of St. Louis, when I get pulled over by a police officer, that there may be an issue. I stand before you as a black man who represents young black men and women in my community that are very concerned about the interaction with the police department. I stand before you as a black man who's had conversations with young black males, especially in my neighborhood, who wants to run from the police as their only option of survival, which is unacceptable. I stand before you as a black man who's not surprised at the verdict, but certainly saddened and disappointed. I stand before you as a black man to say that we definitely need healing in the city of St. Louis. As the Alderman from the 18th Ward so eloquently said and gave us the history, we do need to elevate this conversation to a level where it's impactful and meaningful to the next generation coming up, so that we can work together, law enforcement and the community as a whole. It's overwhelming that there's a disparity between the treatment of African Americans, especially black males, and other races in the city of St. Louis, and it's unacceptable. It is my hope that the protest today, and maybe this weekend, doesn't destroy our city, because that's counterproductive. That is absolutely what we don't need, is innocent people being hurt or violated. But at the end of the day, we must stop the madness. We must do a better job. It is all our responsibility here as leaders, whether you are black or not. If you're not black, being an ally to the African American community and standing up for the injustice and doing your part. This is a sad day in the city of St. Louis, and it doesn't help us. It doesn't help the racial division within the city of St. Louis. Now, I would definitely say I was not a juror. There was no jury. It was all left up to the judge. I question the judge's decision, but at the end of the day, I have to accept it. But what's going to happen is more and more African Americans are not going to accept these type of verdicts. They're not going to accept this type of treatment. And we're going to have chaos and anarchy if we don't hurry up and figure out how to bridge the gap. So I'm hoping after today that we can honestly actually work together as a united body to help heal our city and move it forward. We can no longer continue to just talk. We must actually start talking the talk and walking the walk. Thank you.
Wait 1 second. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As the mother of a 13-year-old black son, I stand before you frustrated, saddened. I mean, it's like, I remember us 3 or 4 years ago with the whole Ferguson incident, standing before you saying the same thing. I shouldn't have to tell my black child how to interact with the police. And it's like almost as if we haven't learned anything since then. And as a leader, it's hard to constantly, put it in your constituents' heads. You need to vote, you need to do this, you need to do that so things can get better. And then you have situations like this constantly occur in our community. We need to just stop constantly talking about it. We need to actually do something, because whereas we're out here and we know we took an oath to lead, we have a community out there that's desensitized. They're fed up, they're frustrated. They don't know what else to do. And it's just sad, like you said on the news, we're pushing for cameras. All of this happened in our backyard, and 75% of other cities who weren't even affected by it, they have cameras. We don't have cameras. I'm frustrated, I'm hurt by it. Yes, I'm always gonna be surprised by it, because sometimes you think that eventually things will get better, and it appears that our city isn't getting better. It appears that the racial divide within our city is not getting better. We gotta get past our police department just being able to say they fear for their safety and that gives them a right to kill. I mean, you can train them, but we gotta do something better. People are counting on us to do something better. And I pray really hard about this. We don't need another Ferguson in the streets of St. Louis, because it's gonna be an entirely different animal, but I just feel it's incumbent upon us to do something, because people are tired, they're fed up, and they elected us to lead, so it's time to exhibit some type of leadership. I know we're limited in what we can do, but we just gotta push harder, because if we don't, this type of stuff is gonna continue to happen, and I can't rest well with that.
Thank you, Alderwoman from the 1st. We're going to have a special order of the day because there is one piece of business that we have to get out today. Alderwoman from the 19th, I'm going to recognize you on the motion for the courtesy resolution calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I make a motion to approve the courtesy resolution calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd, and Alderwoman from the 13th. Alderwoman from the 1st, you recognize.
Members of the board, I move to suspend the rules to introduce Resolution 136.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st that we move to suspend the rules for the introduction of the resolution, and it's been moved by seconded by the Alderman from the 4th and Alderman from the 25th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd. 23 aye votes.
By your vote, stay in the motion. Alderman from the first. Alderman from first, you recognize.
Mr. President, members of the board, Resolution 136 is a resolution for Ms. Norma Leggett, who was a longtime Democratic Fourth Ward Committee woman, and I'd ask that the resolution be passed in bank.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the first. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please prepare another copy of the resolution in bank. Thank you.
So noted.
Anything further, Alderman?
Mr. President, I'd just like to take a moment to speak to the verdict. I heard people here earlier say how hard it is to get a murder verdict. I practiced a number of years as a member of a bar as a public defender and a defense attorney. I was down here just a few weeks ago telling you what a big mistake it is to take money from the public defender's budget and give it to the prosecuting attorney's budget, because it's like taking your air from your right tire and putting it in your left tire. You still got a flat tire. Because I have been a member of the bar, I practiced before Judge Wilson. In fact, he and I started together. When I started my career as a defense attorney, he had just become a judge. So I know a lot of black people will say, I knew what the outcome was going to be. But when you're a defense attorney, if you don't believe in the system, then you cannot be a good defense attorney. I have always had to believe in the system. I had to believe in the system as a black female to become an attorney in 1987, to go to law school. I had to believe in the system. I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I believe in the system, even when I've been done wrong by this very board right here, when I was gerrymandered, which is cheating. I still believe in the system. I believe in Judge Wilson because he's been, I wouldn't say he was my personal friend, but we've been on very friendly terms. So I believe in him. Just like I believed in people down here when they voted to tear up my ward. I believe in the system. It is hard for me to imagine getting up and not believing in the United States of America, okay? I know a lot of other people think, oh, how can you do that, all the things that happen? Because I can't imagine growing up in my fairy tale world in Decatur, Illinois, not believing where I lived at, okay? Bad things happen, and always have, and you get up and you go at it again. You fight another day. Why I'm back down here at this Board of Aldermen? Because I didn't let this Board of Aldermen tell me, oh, this is what you're going to do. No. So when I heard the verdict this morning, I was on my way down here. I went back in my house and got sick to my stomach. Some of this personal. When you know somebody who's rendered a verdict like that and you think of them as a just person, and then you hear this, for me, even though I kind of assumed, I still had this hope that this thing is going to be all right, that we're going to have a just verdict. I believe this to be an unjust verdict. I've seen, because I've been a public defender, and they do murder trials, I've seen them, they get murder convictions all the time. We just don't get murder convictions against police. Now, you would never, ever put public defenders and defense attorneys on any jury because they will tell you how much the police lie. And when I say this, let me say, I'm a police person. I grew up next door to the police. I didn't have the black experience that people tell me about. I had the officer-friendly experience. Who do you call when there's a problem? The police. Who lived 2 doors down from me? The police. I believe in the police. Oftentimes, when other blacks down here are voting one way, I'm voting the other way for the police. I believe in them. But I don't believe that they're above the law. See, we have elevated the police so they're above the law. We have what's known in this United States of America a reasonable test. When you get ready to find somebody guilty, you got to find them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't just find them guilty, because I think so. And so with the police, we've given them an out. We've given them the ability to say, I feared for my life. Okay. Sharon Tyers, I fear for my life and the life of black men in the city of St. Louis. So does that give me the right to carry an illegal weapon and get out and shoot somebody in cold blood because I'm angry? The alderman from the 18th talked about that, the psychosis of it all. We need to check and have some kind of thing that we put a check on the police. And I'm talking about the psychological effect. Back when the Vietnam War was going on, we talked about post-traumatic stress. We don't talk about it for the police, because anything you talk about the police, they come out in force, and then they're opposed to it as though, if you're questioning anything they're doing, that you're questioning your loyalty to the police. I can be pro-police and still want good laws. If we have a reasonable test for all the citizens of the United States, there has to be a reasonable test for the police. Otherwise, you allow them to just say, I fear for my life. They can commit cold-blooded murder. I fear for my life. From the time that Michael Brown happened a couple of years ago, we started talking about what it would take to convict police. Now, the public defenders and defense attorneys, we have already known these things that you all are seeing now. We already know, because if you try a case, my first 3 cases, I got not guilties, proving the police were lying, bold-faced lies, okay? So first 3 cases I ever tried in my life, felony cases, not guilty in under an hour, because the police were lying. So unless we're going to say whatever the police says is the truth and they never lie, then we have to admit that the police lie. They murder, they cheat, they steal, they do all the same things that we as a society do. And when because they are supposed to be in charge of defending us, protect and serve, that we don't want to acknowledge that they can also do wrong things. We're treating them just like we do our kids when we don't want to hear that our kids has done something wrong. And that is wrong. That is wrong for this legislative body to do it. It is wrong for the state legislative body to do it. It's wrong on a national level. If we don't realm in the police, then the very actions that we're so scared of happening is going to happen. And when I hear people saying, oh, well, those people are going to act up, I guess they forget about our history in the United States. How did we become the United States? We acted up. We had tea parties. We threw stuff in. We decided we didn't want to belong to England anymore, so we stole things. We had a war. We declared war. We said, we's free, okay? So then all of a sudden, when black people and some white people, because I had one of my colleagues say, well, I don't know if I should speak. I totally disagree with that. The problem is enough white people are not speaking out to say this is wrong. I know the person who said that heart, I believe, okay? Although today I'm shocked because I thought I know Judge Wilson Hart, so I guess you really don't know anybody. But I believe them in that they care. I believe a lot of my white colleagues care. I am glad to see all these young people who come down here and got a different spirit, okay, then I'm scared of you because you black, okay? So this is wonderful for me. But we cannot let the police go on just getting by saying, I fear for my life. And so when I hear the alderwoman from the 18th saying, well, it was impossible, no, it isn't. Almost every police officer that I talked to that's on the force knows about Shockley, knows that he carried illegal weapons, knows what his MO was, okay? And if you didn't know, there was this video showing him going to the car, planting a weapon right there. That is the intent you're looking for. why do you have an illegal weapon? What is wrong with your issue that the police gave you? Because you already are breaking the rules and the law, because you intend. Now, we send children to jail who go with their friends, and their friends may murder somebody if they rob somebody, and we say, oh, but that's murder too, because you was with them. But we let the police get away with saying, I feared for my life. There's something wrong with that. And then we're mad at young people who say this is unjust. This is an unjust verdict. An unjust verdict in the city of St. Louis. Unjust. As a member of the bar, I am now calling for that we must elect our judges in the city of St. Louis. And we must hold them accountable. And we should not let judges that are retiring handle cases like this, because that gives them an out. Oh, I'm out of here. We have to do better. We have to start a campaign of electing judges. I have always been on the fence about this. I am now in the lead of it. And I'm friends with most of the judges. They know me from my public defender's days. The people who are even some of the most conservative judges, I get along with Durker. People say, you get along with Durker? I do, because Durker will tell you Sharon Tice would try her cases, okay? I am in shock. So I am one of the black people in shock, because I believed in the system. And it made me sick this morning to hear that, because I want to root for my country. I want to believe my country will be just. I want to believe that there is justice for all. I hear people talking about the verdict when we had Dred Scott case. So I'm also one of the people that believe legally the case was decided right. And the reason why it was decided right, because the laws were still, because our forefathers did not believe in black people or women. They didn't believe in us. So because Dred Scott, we had to change the Constitution to reflect the realities. We have always, that's the great thing about our Constitution, it is fluid. So when I hear people talking about the good old days and wanting the old Constitution, really? I want Justice Clarence Thomas, if he wants the good old days, I want him to get off the Supreme Court, because he would not be there if we were the good old days, okay? So I want to call for young people to be peaceful. I'm standing up here, I'm telling you, we can do things. We can start petitions to elect the judges. We used to not have our control of our police. I still think there's some mistakes in that, but we do. So let's be like the rest of the state. Let's elect our judges. Please know this. This is an unjust verdict. There is a way that that could have been murder. The intent comes for, why do you have an illegal weapon in your trunk or in your car, and why would you plant something on people? I had police tell me this is the murder, this is going to be the murder case. We don't have it because it appears to me that there was something, a deal already cut, and that's the way it's going to go down. And so if I ever try cases again, it's going to make it one little bit harder to go into, step into that court and believe in the system. The great part of it is usually you don't try cases before one judge, and you usually have a jury of peers. And that is why the police officer and his attorney, and note, because his attorney did his job, that's why they didn't want a jury of the peers, because I think you would have found it hard for any reasonable juror, black or white, to have come up with this verdict. I am saddened. This is unjust. And I want to know, are you sending the message that if I say I fear for my life because I think police officers will shoot me, is that all right? And if it's not all right for police officers to do it. But I do call on everyone to be thoughtful in your protest. You do have a right to protest. You're not animals because you protest. And you don't have to protest just where somebody, I heard the mayor say, well, this is where you're going to protest. A protest is not where the mayor tells you to. That is the silliest thing I've ever heard. That means you don't get it, okay? A protest is for you to be surprised. Like when they went over to Harris Stowe and protested, my black friends called me and said, well, they were at Harris Stowe and we're already with them. I said, good, they made your little middle-class black people uncomfortable. That's a protest, okay? If you go to NAACP and protest and you're uncomfortable, that's a protest. Protesting where Mayor Lyda Crewson told you to protest is not a protest. So all I'm saying is be smart like you were with the Michael Brown. You were smart. You appeared at ball games. You were all kind of places. I'm in awe of the young people. We got a state rep who was out there. I'm in awe of you. I want to do what I can because I'm going to protest with you, but it's going to be a safe protest. I'm going to do it on this floor of the Board of Aldermen. When I'm the only one that votes no, I'm your protest, okay? And we can do it in a lot of different ways that are safe, and you don't hurt people and you don't tear up your own community. But if you do, I still don't think you're animals. You're just in good company with our founding forefathers.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to acknowledge that I was the colleague that had the conversation with my colleague from the First Ward, Alderwoman Tyus. Part of taking action sometimes is listening. And I think it's really incumbent on a lot of people in our society today to not talk at one another, but to actually engage in dialogue. And when you engage in dialogue, a big part of dialogue is actually being quiet and listening to the other side and trying to understand where that side and that perspective is coming from. And I know that a lot of my colleagues on the floor today, if not all of them, are saddened and angry and disheartened and disappointed in the decision that's been made today. It's always been my understanding that with bench trials, judges have a lot of authority and latitude in terms of the decisions that are rendered. So, yes, there's always a burden of proof, but there's also other charges that are, potentially able to be levied or decisions that could be rendered. I stand today with all of my colleagues who have voiced their frustrations and sadness and anger and fear. Our city can and needs to do better than where we're at today. It's a travesty. It's just an absolute travesty that young people in our community don't feel safe. It's a travesty that we can't have open dialogue. I'm actually very proud of our legislative body this morning that we're not conducting business as usual, and that we're opening up our microphones and our hearts to an active dialogue with one another, even if we're not able to, by our rules, able to address each other directly. So I think that this is a wonderful testament to our body and the work that we've done and the work that we need to do as a city and as a legislative body to continue moving justice forward for St. Louisans. And so I rise today as a listener and as an active participant in the movement for change in our city. And I just want to thank everyone on the floor today for their engagement in this process as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize, but before you introduce your motion, we still have the motion on the floor for the courtesy resolution calendar. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, hold 1 second. Alderman from the 20th.
Apologies, Mr. President. What I was hoping to do was move that we pass Resolution 134 in bank. It's a resolution honorarily designating Cherokee Street as La Calle Cherokee. It's just a way to commemorate the rich Hispanic culture on the street of Cherokee
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 20th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please create another copy of that resolution. Alderman from the 18th, you're recognized.
President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, September 22nd.
And for what purpose are we going to meet?
What purpose is to go to the rotunda and do the collective unity prayer.
Okay, so we're going to adjourn. We're going to go down to the rotunda for prayer and a collective unity. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th and seconded by Alderman from the 26th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.